And very much welcome to Simon Edström.
Thank you so much, Christer. Pleasure to be here.
You're the CEO at the Swedish fintech company Instantor, and you will tell us more around what you do and your company, obviously, in this webinar. But the main focus will be to explain what PSD2 will mean to traditional players like banks and financial companies, but also for new companies and new players like startups and fintechs. And also the consumer perspective, what it means for you and me, and what kind of services we can anticipate to be able to use. So very much welcome to Arvato. The floor is yours, Simon.
Thank you so much, Christer. So my name is Simon Edström. I'm CEO of Instantor. Instantor is an account information service provider who build products to help financial institutions and banks to use PSD2 and to leverage on in the credit life cycle. So PSD2 is the second payment service directive, and the aim is to increase the competition in the market within the payment space and also to promote new innovative services. And there's many services that can be built on top of the banking infrastructure that have traditionally only been available to traditional banks. But now with PSD2, those infrastructures is open up for third parties, such as Instantor and other parties as well, so they can build products on top of that. PSD2 also regulate how the market will operate and and provide guidelines for all the players that are active in the market, both the banks who are providing data to third parties and third parties who are accessing the data. So it's really good that it's because it's increased the security for the consumers as well. With PSD2, there are some new entities that are introduced: PISPs, Payment Initiation Service Provider, and AISPs, Account Information Service Providers, such as Instantor. PISPs, they use banking infrastructure to execute payment orders on behalf of customers. AISPs, such as Instantor, we can access bank infrastructure to retrieve bank data and the transactional data from payment accounts and to build products on top of that. And with PSD2, there is with PSD2 focuses around users' transparency and how the end consumer at the end of the day understand what new services is going to use, and everything is based on the consent of the user. It's not possible for a third party to execute something without the consent of the consumer, which is something that is good, but it's worth to highlight because it might be scary to learn that many third parties have access to the bank infrastructure. But PSD2 strictly regulates how the access should be, how users and consumers at the end of the day should be informed about what's going to happen and what services there are.
Yeah, so it means that if I go and apply for a loan, I need to give my consent for anyone to dig into my data.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is also similar to last year's big EU directive, GDPR, isn't it? So it boils down to like consent somehow.
Yeah, exactly. So with PSD2, many parties that have operated with the transactional data or with the use of banking infrastructure before it was regulated, they nowadays need a license from a competitive authority, such as the financial regulators in Europe. That is also good because it's kind of increased the trust, and it makes them a whole market more secure, since it's only licensed parties that are available to operate and have access to this sensitive data. and those sensitive systems.
So everyone is operating by the same rules.
Exactly.
Somehow. But the only thing that might differ a little, isn't it, is that exactly when this is implemented fully in all markets.
Yeah, I mean, you made reference to GDPR, and I think that the big difference from a legal perspective, GDPR and PSD2 is that PSD2 is a directive, so it's up to the countries themselves to implement it in national law and translate it. There are some timelines provided by Europe when things are going to happen, but at the end of the day, there are some difference in national level still.
Yes, but we can say that 2019 is the year when it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So it will be an exciting year.
Yeah.
And also when we talk about PSD2, sometimes it pops up the term open banking, and we just want to clarify how they are related. So PSD2 is the implementation in Europe which aims to open up the payment accounts and that infrastructure for third parties. In Instantor, we are active in also outside of Europe, and we also see the trend there that there is a lot of talks about open banking, and basically it means that legislators and regulators, banks, and also companies, they see the need for opening up other infrastructure and not just access to the payments account, and those are often called open banking, and that could be so PSD2 is the implementation in Europe, but among the world, and I think that the trend is very clear that we see that many see benefits of having more open access to the bank's infrastructure, and it's a trend that is really coming. So I think that will be very interesting for many tech companies to use the benefits that open banking and PSD2 is providing. And for a traditional player, as you mentioned, Christer, this is the year when it's going to happen. And many traditional players, they need to enable third parties access to their infrastructure. And with traditional players, we mean banks, traditional financial institutions that have huge customer bases with a lot of payment accounts, because those are the ones that are going to open up that access to third parties. I think that also from a consumer perspective, it means that we will see more cooperation between fintech players who develop products using this new data and new infrastructure that is available, and also and those products could be implemented by the traditional players, because basically you will give more players access to this infrastructure, and the benefit will be for all parties here.
Yeah, so it means there's a clear upside also for traditional players in this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you believe in partnership, there is.
Yeah, in potential partnerships and corporations.
Yeah, exactly. And what we are focusing on at Instantor, it is to use the transactional data that is available through PSD2 to increase the effectiveness in the underwriting process and when in the decision making in a loan application. So what we see is that when you take traditional data and combine it with the new data that is available through PSD2, you will have more faster decisions when it comes to a credit decision. You basically have more data points that you can underwrite to, and you have a better understanding who you're dealing with, which is both beneficial for you as a bank, but also for you for an end consumer who can show your real and true financial power and capabilities. Also, when data is becoming digital, you reduce the risk of frauds, because it's harder to fake, basically. All the data that is extracted comes from a secure source, such as the bank themselves, and there is really no way to kind of interfere with this connection. So that is also something very positive. We also highlighted in this example income verification, and in many countries where Instantor is active in, that is a problem for many banks who want to give out a loan to verify the income. But using transactional data to verify that data point, it increased the effectiveness in the underwriting process. But all of this is kind of a few, but many of the good things that comes with PSD2, and there is some real applications on how you can actually use it to improve your banking processes today. And for us who identify ourselves as a fintech and a startup, we see that PSD2 is very positive. It's clearly kind of gives guidelines on how all the players should operate with each other who are operating on the market, both banks, fintechs, and clearly define the roles. And we basically have the same regulatory framework to work with, which is great for us. Also, it increased the trust for smaller players, since they are regulated, which is a positive thing also. So I think it's really good for the market. And something else we would like to highlight is that the fact that with PSD2 there are many, it will be a lot of new data points that comes that becomes available. And in Sweden, in average, when Instantor receives transactional data, the average of transaction is around 1,000 transactions. But to turn those into insights that are valuable for the business, it also requires that you use technology that are and the new methods to leverage that value, because the data itself is not valuable if you don't do anything with it and if you don't have the right tools. But the good thing with PSD2 is that it should bring better data. I say it should be because we are still in the implementation phase here. But many of the issues that occurred before PSD2, that data structures were changed and you changed how data was delivered to third parties, those things should be eliminated, and we should have clear standards, proper understanding on what service level we can see from the banks and from this infrastructure, which will make it easier to build good products on top of it, and it will also kind of reduce of the work of data issues such as cleaning, testing, data quality, and so on. So it will kind of give all parties more time to actually develop something that is useful and brings value to the table.
So all these APIs that the banks will bring forward, do you think they will all be very structured, or will they be structured in a similar way? Or
yeah, I mean, it will be better than it is before PSD2. If it will be perfect, I don't think so. But for sure, the intention is to reduce this, which I think is very positive. And we also see that banks are more open towards third parties and listening to them and want to have something that is attractive for third parties to use, which is positive. And one thing that we find in our market research 2019 credit report is that 70% of financial organizations in Europe, they are implementing machine learning to some extent. Machine learning, it's a broad term, and we think that in a way it's great that there is so much interest in machine learning, because it is really a technology that could help you to leverage the data that will become available through PSD2. So I think it's great that there is a lot of interest. The technology is there the tools and the technology is there to utilize the data that will be available or that are available with PSD2. So that's very positive. I would like to show an example of how PSD2 data and traditional credit bureau data could affect the business of a lender. So in this example, we have a Swedish player that have unsecured loans up to 100,000 SEK, which is equivalent to around 10,000 euros. And what we see is that when they use traditional credit bureau information and then combined with the new data that is available from PSD2, they can significantly reduce their non-performing loans. They can increase their performing loans. And in this example, we saw that the overall return for loans increased by 27%. And fundamentally, this is basically because you have more data points, you know more about your customer, and you have a better understanding who you're dealing with, which it's logically that it makes sense.
So I'm pretty sure this client was quite satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely, they were. Yeah. And I think that if you look on what we're trying to do is that when you're talking about risk, you want to kind of combine data that you have with smart algorithms, making models that will kind of predict the outcome based on what you know. But sometimes, even if you have the algorithm and the models, if you don't have data that really represent the one that you're about to underwrite, it's really hard to make good decisions. And often we see that when you're offering loans to people that you don't know, you see them as very risky, not because they are, but just because you don't know enough about them. So what we see with PSD2 is that it brings more data that could be used for the underwriting purposes, which kind of will give you as a lender better understanding who you're dealing with. You will have a better understanding on the pricing of it and the risk of that consumer. And for the consumer, it's also good that he can show his true financial capabilities. So with all these things combined, we think that it's really it really makes sense to start to experiment with using PSD2 and transactional data as part of the underwriting process. And for Instantor, PSD2 has made many changes, both from like an operational perspective on how we can retrieve data, how we can get access to bank infrastructure, and then also that we are a licensed entity nowadays, and that has also kind of increased the trust for parties who want to do businesses with us. So I think it's really positive, all the changes, all the impact that PSD2 have made for the company. I think that, again, I want to highlight that data that will become available with PSD2 or are available with PSD2, it is extensive. It is something new that normally hasn't been used for risk purposes. So it's really key to kind of have the right tools and be able to interpret that and kind of connect it to different processes within the lending cycle to actually gain some value out of it. And I think that there are many fintech players out there that are trying to build tools and products around data. In Instantor, we are really focused to use this transactional data for the purposes of increase the effectiveness in the lending cycle, and for things such as the credit decision, for underwriting, and for verifying income. So we have many off-the-shelf products that interpret the data and really kind of make it easy to implement and connect it to your business processes.
So I guess also that this is a real win-win situation where it's good for the companies because they know who this consumer is, but also for the consumer because maybe the consumer has old data or has problems to verify the present situation otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And we have case later that we will kind of go into how it looks like. But I think that one of the few key things with PSD2 and using that transactional data as part of the underwriting process is that it is a new source of information. It is something that traditionally not have been used for risk scoring or and it fundamentally it kind of gives a more a better insight who you're dealing with. It kind of you will see behaviors that have not been available to see in a loan applicant before, and it comes in a technically structured and pre-packaged format, so it's easy to kind of apply modern technology to leverage that and support your digitalization journey as a bank. So it's really something that you should look into if you are a bank and work with lending, which I assume that most banks does.
So I guess all of this will speed up the digitalization overall within this industry.
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. And this is another example that we would like to highlight, and this is from a Switch client of ours who use our income verification product, which basically leverage data from PSD2, analyze it, and predict the income. And by applying it, the customer have been able to reduce the number of frauds with 24 percentage points. And this is due to that since the data comes from a secure place, it's hard to kind of fake it, it's hard to kind of modify it. Traditionally, if you were going to look on salary slips or kind of have someone sending in a photo scan of your employment contract and so on, it is easy that that someone make a small modification that will gain themselves. Also it kind of increased the effectiveness of the processes, because if you had to deal with a lot of papers and a lot of scanned photos, it's hard to kind of build system that fully automate your lending process. So we can see in this example that this customer, before they used Instantor, they took 2 hours to kind of resolve those applicants that required some extra effort. Now they can resolve it in 10 minutes, which is great operational effectiveness achieved by leveraging the data with PSD2. And here is a quote that we are proud of and that we would like to highlight from our customer Northmill here in Sweden. It basically says that the information that is provided helps to reduce frauds, and the loan effectiveness or the time consumed for handling a loan have been reduced drastically. So it's something that really kind of shows the effect of our products. And PSD2, what does it mean for the end consumers? I think it's exciting times for being a consumer as well, because there are many new services that will pop up. There are great companies out there that will try to leverage the infrastructure that are now available for them, for third parties, and they can build close to banking services that banks have not been able to provided with before. So I think it's really positive that we will see many innovative services that will gain all of us. And then also that the fact that it is a regulated market nowadays, so the trust of it and has really kind of been increased, and it's also make it more secure to try out new fintech companies and try their products, because they are strictly regulated and have a high standards to live up to. But of course, I think that there are some challenges. I mean, PSD2, it is still something that is under implementation. There are some details that still needs to be resolved, and I think that we'll see some debates this year. Banks, for instance, they need to open up their infrastructures or the payment infrastructure to third parties. It will be technical challenges for a traditional player, but I think that those challenges will be overcome, and that it will be very positive with a lot of new services in the market at the end of the year, which is truly good for everyone.
Yeah, so it means that we're going to see a lot of innovative services probably maybe later on this year or even next year, I guess, if this should be in place later on this year. So
yeah, and I'm aware that there are many companies that are in the early stages now to kind of experiment, see what they can do with it. So it's exciting times, absolutely. I also want to highlight that in our latest market research, 44% of financial institutions, they didn't have an understanding of how machine learning will impact them from an operational perspective. I think that is exciting. Earlier we showed that 70% are experimenting with machine learning in the credit underwriting. So it is exciting that all the potential hasn't been kind of revealed yet. There are many opportunities that hasn't been explored, but they will for sure have an operational impact for banks when you are able to digitalize the full processes. You have new data, you have that could be consumed by great technologies such as machine learning and AI to benefit the business processes, which is exciting. Lastly, I would like to talk a bit about Instantor. We were founded 2010. We have been around for 8 years. There are a few billions of transactions that have passed our systems. We have over 300 banks integrated in 25 markets, and our focus is to help financial institutions to leverage PSD2 and new data within their credit life cycle and be better on things like credit decision and the onboarding of customers. We have 200 clients that are spread among Europe, Latam and Asia.
Yeah, and I know also that Financial Times released their yearly top list of the fastest growing companies. I think it was just even this week or last week. But you were on the top list.
Yeah, we were.
So congratulations. I also know that you ended up second within the fintech category in Sweden, which is also very impressive, as that is a rather big scene this side. So.
Yeah, thank you. It's something that we're really proud of and that we worked very hard on, and it gives it's something we're really thankful for. All right, so last I have my contact details. If there is anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that might pop up. I also would like to say thanks to Arvato for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to participate in this webinar. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's been fantastic. It's been great that we've been covering, all these different aspects around traditional players and new like startups and fintechs and also the consumers. And then we can see that there is an upside for everyone within this somehow. So 2019 is really the year of PSD2.
Yeah,
we can say that. Right. Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.